This was the first ever election for a king in Norwegian history. They had to choose their king of Norway from 4 highly respected leaders. Originally, Bjorn was the designated choice for king, but a twist of fate turned the selection into a fair election. In the end, Harald narrowly defeated Bjorn by just 2 votes to become the first king after Norway's unification.
And so it has been fated.
And who are we to question the wisdom of the gods? Harald, fine hair, you have been chosen to be the first king of all Norway.
This outcome surprised both Bjorn and Olaf. From planning to execution, Olaf paved the way for Bjorn, only to have their efforts inadvertently hand victory to Harald. Had they known, they would have killed Harald earlier. But now, with all dust settled, every Norwegian leader was a witness, and no one could dispute the results. Bjorn was the most upset, as he had gone to great lengths to save Harald, who would otherwise have remained a prisoner under Olaf. Yet now, Harald had transformed and become the king of all Norway. It wasn't Bjorn's dream to be king of Norway, but it was like having a duck in the mouth that flew away. There is nothing more cruel than giving someone hope only to plunge them into despair.
It was a fair fight!
Yet, Olaf was still puzzled about what promises Harald made to those people to sway the election.
I promised each of them what they wanted to hear.
Later, Harald thanked Kjetil but wanted to know why Kjetil had betrayed Bjorn. Actually, Kjetil was a very ambitious man, aiming to become the king of Iceland. Due to Floki's disappearance, Bjorn no longer trusted him, so Kjetil placed his hopes on Harald.
I want to be king of Iceland. And you can make it happen.
During their conversation, they realized Bjorn was not in the banquet hall. Later, Harald secretly sent out a few men, and Kjetil realized Bjorn might be in danger. Although Kjetil disliked Bjorn, not saving a dying man was not the Viking way, so he immediately went to warn Bjorn.
Bjorn, you have to leave. What do you mean? Harald is going to kill you.
But before Kjetil could finish his sentence, several armed warriors rushed in. Bjorn's fighting ability is diminishing day by day. Last time Harald saved him, this time it was Kjetil who rescued him. During the fight, Kjetil was struck in the thigh, leaving Bjorn to fight alone. Thinking he was about to die, Kjetil apologized to Bjorn, but Bjorn couldn't concern himself with that. Among those enemies were several whom he had marked. This was the consequence of letting the tiger return to the mountain. At that critical moment, a spear pierced an enemy's chest, and a red-haired warrior approached from the direction of the docks.
No time, he's too badly wounded.
With his help, Bjorn and Kjetil successfully escaped. Bjorn, who had come to rescue Harald with a large army, not only lost all his warriors but also handed Harald the throne of Norway, and now he was being hunted by Harald. The red-haired warrior was named Eric, who had been exiled for killing several neighbors and had become an outlaw.
For what it is worth, I offer you my protection.
That is very kind of you. But I noticed that you lost the election. So, I hope there is a future for both of us, Bjorn Ironside.
Come and fight me! I long for Valhalla!
After their previous invasion failed, the raiders launched another attack on the village, this time recruiting more men and devising a more detailed battle plan. For example, sending a raid on the archers at the high point. However, the villagers did not sit idly by. They constructed a labyrinth of vines on the road leading to the warehouse. In order to get the food, the robbers could not care less. They split into 3 groups and headed deeper into the labyrinth. But little did they know that this seemingly simple vine maze was filled with hidden traps. White Hair, frantic and furious, loudly called out for Lagertha, wanting her to appear and face him in a fight to the death, but this also revealed his position. Seizing the opportunity, Lagertha struck with her sword, but unfortunately, the blow did not hit White Hair's vital spot. Unable to break through the maze, the bandits had no choice but to scale the walls and flee. During the escape, the injured White Hair encountered Gunhild, who was unable to fight effectively due to her pregnancy. White Hair seized the opportunity and slashed at Gunhild's thigh, and a shield maiden who had come to help was beheaded by White Hair. At that moment, Lagertha also gave chase. Seeing this, White Hair did not dare to engage further. He had initially planned to draw the villagers into the clearing to fight, but found that his bandit crew had scattered in all directions.
And live like dogs! We may be Skagamores, but we can still reach Valhalla!
As White Hair shouted for his men, Lagertha also emerged. White Hair harbored his own grievances, believing that his loyalty to Ivar was not misguided. As he was loyal only to the king, he had wanted to continue serving Bjorn, but Bjorn never gave him the chance, instead stripping him of his pride and identity and branding him with an indelible mark. As the saying goes, a cornered dog will leap over a wall. As a fiery Viking, White Hair refused to die old in the forest. He was determined to take the most renowned shield maiden down with him if he was to die. Lagertha stated that Bjorn did not punish them for their loyalty to Ivar, but because they betrayed Ragnar's faith.
Everything Ragnar stood for.
Be prepared.
In the ensuing fight, both sides suffered injuries. The villagers in the maze also came to support, but Lagertha refused anyone's help. As the wife of a Viking legend, Queen of Kattegat, and Norway's most famous shield maiden, Lagertha is not afraid to die in battle. At that moment, Lagertha wanted to prove herself. She wanted everyone to see that despite her graying hair, despite her limp, despite her injuries, she remained the brave shield maiden. Even though her shield was shattered and her weapon knocked from her hand, Lagertha had no intention of seeking help. Lagertha spread her arms and fixed the enemy with a confident gaze, thinking that Lagertha had accepted her defeat. White Hair moved to finish her off, but Lagertha seized the opportunity to drive her broken shield into White Hair's neck. Then, Lagertha grabbed a long sword and ended White Hair, avenging her grandson Halli. Lagertha's counterattack was nothing short of spectacular, proving not only her bravery but also her extraordinary courage. Even Gunhild couldn't stop praising her.
If I didn't worship you before, Lagertha, I worship you now. May the gods, in all their wisdom, keep you alive.
In reality, Lagertha was just toughing it out during the fight. She had received a deep axe wound to her waist, which almost cost her life. But before Lagertha could rest for a few days, she had to return to Kattegat to deliver a message. She needed to tell everyone what had happened here and apologize to Bjorn and Torvi. Gunhild wanted to accompany Lagertha back, but being pregnant and hindered in her movements, Lagertha declined her kind offer. On a stormy night, Lagertha returned to Kattegat alone. The long journey, combined with her severe injuries, left her in a semi-conscious state. Meanwhile, the residents were all indoors avoiding the rain, and Ub and Torvi were quietly enjoying a performance in the longhouse. So, no one knew Lagertha had returned home. Unable to endure the excruciating pain from her torn wound, Lagertha finally collapsed off her horse and struggled to crawl toward the longhouse. At that moment, even a single person stepping outside could have been a lifesaver for her. Amidst her haze, Lagertha thought she saw the seer, who had already passed away, which reminded her of her own fate. Outside, the booming thunder sounded like Thor hammering his anvil, amplifying Hvitserk's fear, as he believed Ivar was coming back to settle scores with him. Despite Amma's repeated assurances that Ivar was not there, Hvitserk remained unconvinced.
You have to save.
How can I save when Ivar's coming to kill me? Huh? Do you want him to kill me?
No, of course I don't.
Then shut your mouth!
Tired of living in Ivar's shadow, Hvitserk decided it was time to end things, so he grabbed a dagger and rushed outside. At this moment, the singer is belting out a song inside the longhouse. Although it's unclear what he's singing about, the tune is unmistakably tragic, as if narrating the final moments of a great leader. At this very place and time, this song becomes Lagertha's elegy, illuminated by flashes of lightning. Hvitserk spots a long tail. Approaching, he realizes it's what he perceives as the embodiment of Ivar. This time, Fitzurk will not back down. He musters the courage to charge at the monster and stabs it repeatedly with his dagger. However, when Fitzurk comes to his senses, he discovers that it's not a monster at all, but a struggling Lagertha.
It is what the seer foretold. That one day, I would be killed by a son of Ragnar.
Realizing the grave mistake he has made, Fitzurk can do nothing to undo it. He can only hold Lagertha and weep loudly in guilt.
I could not escape it, nor could you. Weep not, poor Fitzurk. Tonight, I'll sit with my beloved Ragnar in the halls of the gods. I lived a full life.
In this tragic mix-up, Fitzurk has killed Lagertha, Norway's most famous shield maiden. The Viking legend and wife of Ragnar ultimately dies by the hand of Ragnar's son. Meanwhile, still adrift at sea, Bjorn senses his mother's demise.
What is it?